Hi ho music fans, welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm your host Steven, and in Under the Radar Review, I'm going to pick one of the most polarizing albums ever. This one being Judas Priest's Turbo. The album was released in 86, it went platinum, but it divided the fan base from the get-go. It has divided the fan base ever since. It has celebrated a 30-year anniversary release, and still fans are disjointed. Either you love it or you hate it. You were not a fan of Judas Priest, but you love this album. If you were a Judas Priest fans, you hate this album. If you know, it's just incredible. To this day, this album still is, to some fans, sacrilege. To some, it's the second coming. So it depends on who you are and what you like, right? I got into Judas Priest because of this album. You know, it was easy accessible. It was catchy. Loved it. I listened to it yesterday. I still think it's a great album. I really love title track Locked In is not bad. Never liked it before. I liked it yesterday. Private Property and Parental Guidance are basically a glam version of You Got Another Thing Coming. Rock You All Around the Road is okay. Out in the Cold is probably a phenomenal ballad. It's a slow burn. It starts off slow, but man, it just grips you. That is a great song. Say what you want. Say the however it sounds. This is a great song. I don't care. And Halford nails it because of his vocal ability, and that's the bottom line on that one. Um, Glenn Tipton and KK Downing with their synthesized guitars are on fire on a lot of these. I mean, I still think Wild Nights, Not Crazy Day, Hot for Love, Reckless, they're playing on fire. It's granted it's not the Judas Priest It's not as rock. It's synthesized. But you know what? I got into this more. This was less of a disappointment to me than, let's say, listening to Motley Crue's Theater of Pain after hearing Shout at the Devil. What a change. That was a dip. Come Out and Play by Twisted Sister. That was like a disappointment. Power Slave. What's it? Somewhere in Time, they dabbled in synthesizers. It was a natural progression. Van Halen dabbled in it in 1984. Everybody was doing it. These guys jumped right in. They just went full force into 80s sounding rock. And maybe that's what the people, they just went all in. They didn't just dabble, they went all in. And maybe that's the problem. But there's still great songs on here, Parental Guidance, that's a great one. That's when they went against Tipper Gore, when they're saying there's violence and heavy metal and it leads to kids killing themselves, and great track on that. Private Property too. Like I said, it's an updated version of Another Thing Coming from Judas Priest. The lyrics are different. It's more based on love, sex, everyday kind of thing, as opposed to the dystopian sci-fi settings that Judas Priest were known for up to that point. But think about it. Turbo opens up the way it sounds. It's like you're listening to a sci-fi movie. So that sci-fi presence is there. It's just, as opposed to the lyrics, it's the sound. So it's not a far stretch to what they're trying to do, or what they always try to do. So I don't see what the big deal is anymore. I think after 30 years, I think we can accept the fact that this is a unique sounding album. The remaster sounds phenomenal, by the way. I put it on yesterday. Loved it to no end. And to this day, like I said, some fans say it's sacrilege to like this album. Some fans say second coming of the band, or some people like me got into Priest because of this album. It was played everywhere at one point, so I got to hear them. And you can't knock it. That it's still talked about. There's a 30-year anniversary, and it's still as polarizing to this day as the day as it was released. Says something, And like I said, compared to Theater of Pain and Come Out and Play by Twisted Sister and Motley Crue, those were slightly dips in records and what they were after. Like I said, after Shout of the Devil, Theater of Pain was like, I went, wow. Home Sweet Home is a great track, don't get me wrong. Smoke in the Motor, but the album as a whole, kind of weak. Like this is better. And by all accounts, this is better. So that people were like, oh my God, synthesized guitars. And oh my God. They were just doing what everybody else was doing. They just went all in. Like I said, Iron Maiden dabbled in it somewhere in time. Van Halen too had synthesized, but these guys went all in. Give them credit. But like I said, it sounds like a sci-fi movie soundtrack. And their lyrics before this was about dystopia and sci-fi. So that we had a hard time wrapping our head around it, I still don't get it. Like I'm saying, it's not. This is no way gonna beat Houses of the Holy from Zeppelin or anything. But it's a fun album. That people are saying it's sacrilege. It's a little much, but it's accessible. Every band, every once in a while. Look at Van Halen 1984. How many guys started with that album and went backwards? Present company included. I picked up Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden and it went backwards. Why? Because it was played on radio. It was more accessible. There's nothing bad about it. You think these guys are going to, we hope we only sell 10 copies of this thing? They want to sell as many as they can. Make it accessible. What's the big deal? I liked it. I think it's a great album. Out in the Cold, man. One of the most underrated ballads in the 80s. This thing starts off slow, builds, and it burns, man. Holy cow. Anybody should go back, listen to that song. It is great. Private Property, Parental Guidance. Yeah, they're a little cheesy. But it's catchy. They got hooks. They got hooks for days, man. Hooks for days. And you know what? Every guy was writing hooks in that time. That was the whole point. Catchy hooks. Stays in your head. You buy the album. To this day, I still love it. 30 years later, over 30 years later, I still like this album. How many bands can say that? So you know what? I don't think it's sacrilege. I think it's a good album. I think it deserves, if you like Judas, and if you don't even like, if you like 80s rock in general, this is a no-brainer. It's a great album. And I stand by it. I don't think it's sacrilege from the band. I think they just went all in. That was the era. They were following, instead of saying following just the trend, they're going way into it, as deep as they can go. Nothing wrong with that. All in or all out, I guess, with Priest. That was their way. So that we're still polarized over this album, I don't know. It's a great album and deserves to be listened to and deserves to be in your collection if you're a Judas Priest fan. Even if you're not. If you like Motley Crue, Rat, Extreme, who else? Tesla, you name it, any of those 80s, Cinderella. If you got into them, this shouldn't be that hard. But hey, that's me. But you let me know. Do you think it's sacrilege, this album? Do you think they, destroyed everything with this album? I don't think so. I just think every band has a they branch off and try something, and sometimes it works. And this one is one of those polarizing albums to this day. Like I said, to this day, I like it. I think you will too. Give it a chance. Yes, it sounds 80s, but you know what? Who doesn't get in the mood for an 80s album every once in a while? Every once in a while I'll put on Motley Crue and I'll put on Rat and I'll put on Poison, Cinderella, Extreme. They were fun songs. It was fun times, What's wrong with having a little fun? And Judas Priest gave me a lot of smiles on my face with that album. And that's all I can say. Put a smile on my face. I was rocking to it as much as I could. Had my, if you're old enough to know, a Walkman, put it in my ear. Head to school, and I sing it along, But that's me. You let me know what you think. Do you like this album? Do you hate this album? Tell me why you hate this album. Tell me why you love this album. And if you can, we would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This is Steven once again. Give me my recommendations. You gotta listen to Judas Priest Turbo once in your life.